every one of the authors talked about culture, the need for a disruptive culture, a flexible culture, an open culture, in order for each of these 10 different approaches to enable success.
Technology is transforming how we think, how we lead, and how we win. From InterVision, this is Status Go, the show helping IT leaders move beyond the status quo, master their craft, and propel their IT vision.
Welcome to Status Go. This is your host, Jeff Tunn. We started Status Go 4 years ago. One of the reasons for creating this podcast and bringing it to you week after week was to combat some of the hype that was surrounding digital transformation. You may recall in 2018, there was a lot of doom and gloom about the topic. Digital transformation was something all the cool kids were doing, and if you weren't, well, you weren't one of the cool kids. There was a lot of disinformation about what digital transformation even was. Fast forward to today, there is still a lot of confusion over just what digital transformation is. In a previous episode, we interviewed two of the fellows with the Institute for Digital Transformation about their release of the Digital Transformation Manifesto. Today, our guest is Dr. Frank Granito. Dr. Granito is the chief scientist for the Institute. He and several Institute fellows have just published the book, Digital Transformation Demystified. We're going to talk about the book, why the Institute decided to write it, and why now. Full disclosure before we get going, yours truly authored one of the chapters in the book. So Frank, welcome to Status Go.
Well, Jeff, thanks a lot for having me. You too are an Institute fellow, so you should be publicizing that as well. Happy to be here.
I always try to slide that in, you know. So Frank, before we start talking about the book that really just came out in the last week or so, can you give us a little bit about your background? How did you come to be the chief scientist for the Institute of Digital Transformation?
Well, there's a very circuitous route. My partner, John Palinkas, sincerely says that apparently he thinks I'm a Renaissance man or the last Renaissance man, and I'll take him at his word. So let's see. What more to the point? What haven't I done? Okay, so let's stick with professionally. I started out with a bachelor's degree in government and politics and political science. So how did that get me to information technology? Heck, I don't know. So I'm looking for a job. I found a job with the government, federal government, and I spent 31 years there. I absolutely loved it. It was serendipitous that I'm looking for a professional series, and they have this systems analyst trainee program. So I apply for it. They have an aptitude test. Apparently, I have an aptitude for it, and I got into this systems analyst series and never looked back. I've since gone on to get a master's degree in technology management and then a doctorate in management and organizational theory. So how it came to be that I became chief scientist was my last year working for the government. I met Charlie Araujo, one of the partners or founders at that time of the Institute. And he was working on a contract for the agency that I was working with. Now, I was a supervisor, an executive type, and I was nearing retirement, so I recused myself from the project. So I had one of my program analysts running the project, and from time to time, she would give me status go. Just thought I'd throw that in there for you. She would give me status and say, Frank, there's this guy Charlie. He talks just like you. You guys, I know you guys would hit it off. This was back in 2011. So she introduced us, and we chatted. We hit it off. Next thing I knew, his partner, John Palinkas, like a couple of weeks later, calls me and one thing leads to another. I end up retiring. I build a relationship with these two guys, and eventually become a partner, and then chief scientist. And that's how it's been going for the
Hmm.
past. Well, this is 2023, so basically the last 10, 11 years.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
so that's how it's come to be. Renaissance man. I've played music professionally. I'm a professional drummer. I've played semi-professional baseball. I've
That I did
done.
not know.
You did not know that? Yes,
I
I
did not
I
know that
did.
one. Yeah.
The last three innings I threw were shutout innings, and I said that was it, hanging it up. Never going to get any better than that. And yeah, just and later in life, I've since completed culinary school. So now
Awesome.
I'm a certified culinarian with the American Culinary Federation. So yeah, I guess John Palinkas is right. I might actually be that Renaissance guy. Who knows? Are we
That's
up to
pretty
date? Are
cool.
you good? You want to know anything
Yeah,
else?
I love that, Frank. I learn something new every time, man. That is great. So let's talk digital transformation. Obviously,
Hmm.
the Institute has really been at the forefront of that. I'll call it that movement over the last
Hmm.
10, 11 years. Give us your assessment of kind of the state of the union. Where are we in digital transformation?
Well, early on, I think you mentioned in your opening, 2018. You're one of the cool kids, and
Yeah.
as some of the cool kids, you want to be implementing that really great technology, and that's really what digital transformation was early on. Um, but now that we've fast forwarded to 2023, whether or not it's the work that the institute and fellows like yourself have been doing, but I do think the community and the industry are really getting it. It's not all about technology, it's about transforming our organizations to be more customer focused, utilizing the technology in ways to be more customer focused, and the technology enabling us to be more customer focused, and changing our processes and procedures, and indeed our organizational structures, and markets even, to
Hmm.
accommodate that. So, from a state of digital transformation, I think the industry is moving in a pretty good direction and really starting to get it, that it's not all about technology, it's about what I said before, and also the culture of the organization having a winning and disruptive and accepting culture. So I think we're in actually pretty good shape moving in that direction.
Good, good. So the book that the Institute just published,
Hmm.
Digital Transformation Demystified.
Hmm.
Why this topic? Why this book? How did it come to be?
Well, the nuts and bolts of it, Jeff, is that we were approached by a publisher to produce this book. They wanted to do a series on digital transformation and needed really a book to kind of start this all off, a primer, if
Mhm.
you would, to get this going. And so they scanned the environment, and what better way to, they thought, to do a primer on this is what they felt was the premier organization or think tank,
Mhm.
if you will, on
Yeah,
transformation, and that is the Institute. So they contacted us. I agreed to do it, but I didn't think I could do it on my own. And so I kind of thought about it, and John and I talked about it, and suggested we get all the fellows involved because there's a lot of knowledge, nuance, approaches to digital transformation that we felt the industry and customers, clients, and everybody else could really benefit from. And the idea of demystification is it's not really a mystery because that's really a red herring. And the red herring is looking for an approach that will that one singular pathway. How do I do digital transformation? If you want to know how to do a project, you go to PMI and find out
right,
what are the
right.
best practices. But there's no life cycle, so to speak, to digital transformation. There's various approaches, and so I wanted to tap into that. We wanted to tap into that by presenting the industry with hey, you could use one or all of these approaches, whatever approach suits you in your journey, whether it's leadership in the chapter that you talk about with the great Lewis and Clark example, or business administration, or business transformation, where Wendy Keene talks about, or
Hmm.
the manifesto, where we talk about what are the guiding principles, what are the things you want to
Hmm.
have kind of foundational to your organization to begin this journey. So the why this, why now was we sensed that people were starting to get it, but thought there was only one way to do it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that we presented that there was many different ways, and you could pick the each chapter off a spice rack and just
Uh-huh.
use it as you wish. So that
Well,
that was
and there
the
you go.
main driving force.
You throw in the spice rack, and that leads me to
I know
your
where you're going.
background as a chef, right? And
Yeah.
we were talking about this a few minutes ago, Frank, and I thought it was a great metaphor of you were comparing and contrasting being a chef, being as a cook, or being a cook. Could you kind of
Hmm.
share that with our listeners?
Well, sure. So let's do a syllogism. So you have leaders and you have managers, right?
Hmm.
Managers do what's necessary, and leaders show how to put things together and how to do things right, and guide folks. So if you want to think about it, the difference between a chef and a cook follows a recipe,
Hmm.
right? So like a manager follows the recipe. Here's how we do it. You do this, you do this, you do this. A chef can open up a basket of ingredients and look inside, and recognizing flavor affinities, personalities, colors, uh, flavors, ingredients, what goes with what, can now create something where there was nothing before.
Uh-huh.
And so if you think of your leader, your transformation leader, as a chef that can look at an organization and put things to open up that organization's basket. If you've ever
Hmm.
watched Chopped or anything like this, and I actually had to do these exercises in culinary school, they just present you with stuff and say, Frank,
Here, make
make
something.
something. Make something. You can use anything else in the kitchen, but it has to contain this. So I pulled I pull some stuff from the manifesto. I pull some stuff from leadership. I pull some stuff from here. I pull some stuff from there, and I put it all together, and I guide my organization to a wonderful dish at the end that says, here you are, folks. And the customer looks at it and says, that looks really, really good. I
Yeah.
want to order that. I'd
Yeah.
like to eat that. So I thank you for prompting
Yeah,
that,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
because yeah.
Well, and continuing on just a little bit to extend that metaphor until we beat the dead horse. Uh, when you think about digital transformation, when the meal's done, you're
Hmm.
not done. You're continuing to transform. So you got to go cook the next night and the next night and the next night. You're always in that mode, right? It's the digital transformation journey rather than the destination, to use that cliche.
Wow, that's I'm glad you continue this metaphor, because I don't think we could beat it up, because as we say in the culinary field, you're going to get hungry again, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, just because you ate a meal doesn't mean you're not going to be hungry
Yeah.
tomorrow, right?
And your
So
customers are going to want something new.
and they're going to want something new, but
Yeah,
you're also going to have to maintain that status. So you
yeah.
develop a dish, it works. You have a product, it works. Now you have to have the prep cooks come in the next day and prep it for the menu. So the menu is the same every day. But some restaurants, some businesses, they have to adapt, they have to adjust. The markets change, the
Yeah.
customer base changes. There might be seasonal menus. So now the
Hmm.
chef has to look at, how do I alter this menu based on seasonal ingredients? How do I alter my offerings based on customer likes and dislikes?
Hmm.
So, if we're continuing that metaphor, yes, I have to have prep cooks in here to continue the operational sustainability, so to speak, as I talk about in
Mhm.
digital readiness,
Yep.
but I also have to have the chefs and sous chefs there developing new stuff in organizational agility and strategic agility. And I have to have the disruptive culture in my kitchen or in my organization to say, look, hey, here's how we're going to do this today. Or one of the cooks might suggest to the chef, here's what do you think about this? And the chef would say, if a chef is a manager and not a leader, he or she might say, no, this is the way we do it.
Hmm.
But a receptive leader might say, oh, tell me about that. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, that sounds like a good idea, but what if we did this? Give me, and it's a really good metaphor because in the real world, you might do a prototype, a fail
Yeah.
fast. So you don't, in an organization, when you're doing some transformation, and in an agile world, you do something and you want to fail fast. Well, in the kitchen, you say, look, I'm not going to serve that to the customers right away. Develop the dish. We'll test it internally. We'll do what they call family meal. Develop
Hmm.
it. Everybody will test it. So it needs more acid. No, a little heavy on this spice. Try some of this. It's a little too sweet here. Blah blah blah. So that's how it's developed. So you're
Yeah.
doing something in a prototype mode, in an agile mode, and then you bring it to production. Same way in an organization. I want to do
Hmm.
that. Show me what it might look like. Let's be agile about it. Let's try 10 things. Seven or six or seven, we're not too optimistic about. Two or three, have a chance. One will succeed, and that makes it worth it.
Yeah. 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 Well, in the book, and dare I call it a cookbook? I'm probably not going to go
Okay.
there. But the cookbook, the book that we're talking about, Digital Transformation Demystified, covers a lot of aspects of transformation. There's 10 chapters, and we'll go through the topics of each 10 chapters here in a second. But um, when you think about the book as a whole, what are some of the major themes that begin to emerge by these 10 different authors who really didn't read each other's work? We just talked about our perspective
Hmm.
on digital transformation, yet themes emerge. So, what are some of those themes that you see across this book, Frank?
Well, Jeff, after I reviewed all 10 of the chapters, and I did keyword searches,
Hmm.
and the significant keyword search that bounced back every time, every one of the authors talked about culture,
Huh.
the need for a disruptive culture, a flexible culture, an open culture, in order for each of these 10 different approaches to enable success. So the overriding theme I found in that was culture. And hopefully the reader will see that. And indeed, when in my chapter wrapping it all up, I call it out.
Hmm.
And whether it's business architecture, whether it's leadership, whether it's readiness, in order to enable those things, culture, a receptive culture, a culture that's willing to accept failure, a culture that's willing to, dare I say, a scientific culture, because the
Hmm.
scientific culture, the approach to science from like a chemist or something like that, their approach is they don't fail. They just found another way that wasn't successful,
Hmm.
which is a very positive view. I just found another way that's not successful, so I know not to do that. Let's move on to something that is successful. And if you, the organization, your leaders can accept that failure is another step in the learning process to success, then that enables almost any transformation, especially digital transformation, because digital transformation is any transformation, as far as any transformation goes, is probably the most rapid and agile. And you need that
Hmm.
culture. So that was really the overriding theme that I found throughout each of these 10 disparate authors and approaches.
I think that's fascinating, and we should mention that the authors of this book have come from really all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have institute fellows from the Philippines, from New Zealand, from a couple of different countries in Europe, obviously the United States, and so to have this worldwide focus on digital
Mm-hmm.
transformation and culture emerge as one of the key ingredients, if you will, was really fascinating. In fact, the first chapter with Ray Lecto from the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
right? We lead off with culture, and he talks us through or takes us through some strategies for identifying culture and then changing culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was another major theme for me that wove itself through a lot of the chapters, and that is driving change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did you see that, Frank? Did you see that emerge in some of the chapters? And if so, kind of where did you see that most prevalent as you recall the work?
Well, first, it was no accident that we put Ray's chapter first.
I didn't think so.
There was no accident. So I'll ping on my chapter on digital transformation readiness.
Hmm.
Now, readiness, we talk about operational sustainability, organizational agility, strategic agility, and disruptive culture. But within those dimensions are attributes and characteristics that query about how you culturally work. So your strategic agility, your ability, let's go with operational sustainability. Operational sustainability is basically just having enough processes to get the job done efficiently.
Hmm.
So there's ITIL, there's CMM, and we look at these maturity models, and we're not looking at that. Because when you get into maturity models, sometimes you get into what I call terminal value. Like I'm at level 4, great. Well, what does that mean? What are your outcomes? What does that mean? Oh, I'm a CMM level 4. Okay, that doesn't mean too much to me. How are you doing these things? Is everybody happy with it? You know, so terminal value is checking the box. Instrumental value is actually doing what's necessary to get the job done. So I use this example all the time from a culture standpoint. A great movie, and people of a certain age will remember it. Cult classic, Office Space. Are you familiar with that movie?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we have the TPS reports, and the beginning of the movie is, hey, did the whole bit about every manager comes up to him, Peter Gibbons, and says, "Did you put the cover sheet on the TPS report? Did you put the cover sheet on the TPS report?" Right? Somehow, the cover on the TPS report became the value of the TPS report. But as you
Hmm.
progress through the movie, when the consultants ask the Lumberg, well, can you tell me what's in the TPS reports? He's blank. He doesn't read the TPS report. So the actual instrumental value of the TPS report is lost on the terminal value
Hmm.
of the cover sheet.
Yeah.
So the same way with operational sustainability and maturity levels, right? We just want just enough to get the job done. Now there's culture factors all embedded in there. You know, how do you, how do you how do you handle changes to processes? Not are your processes documented, you know, but how do you handle the change to the processes? Do you mourn the old way? Do you resist the change to the processes? You know, things of that nature. So it all goes to culture. Same way with organizational agility. Can I react to change in the environment, not internal change, but in changes in the environment? And that really goes to your culture. How do we shift things? If I say we're going to go here in response to that, do people say, well, we've always done it this way, right? A
Yeah.
strategic agility. Can I actually impact change or foresee change? Hey, you know what? I'm thinking this, we might want to try this. And maybe your board of directors or your executives say, oh, I don't know, that sounds pretty risky, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Digital photography, imagine you're in the Kodak boardroom, right?
Yeah.
Digital
Yeah. Yeah.
photography, I don't
That'll
know,
never
that
take
sounds
off.
pretty, that sounds pretty risky. So, you know, so all of that affecting change. I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry, I cracked myself up.
Yeah.
So
No, it's great, man. It's great.
all that, affecting change really is driven by the ability of your culture to accept change. I mean, as humans, we resist change, right? I mean, one
Yeah.
of the most
Yeah.
stressful things we do in our lifetimes, right? We get married, move,
Yeah.
end a relationship. These are stressful things because they involve major
Sure. Change.
change, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's inherent in the human condition to um, um, abhor change and seek equilibrium.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
sort of have to, get out of our comfort zone just a little bit in
Hmm.
order to be a digital enterprise.
Yeah. We do. It's a lot about getting out of our comfort zone. And so for our listeners, I encourage you to grab this book. And just to give you the highlights, I want to touch on each chapter and the author to give them a nice shout out.
Mm-hmm.
So as we said, we lead off with culture with Ray Lugto, business architecture with Wendy Keene, digital transformation manifesto with Ray Sheen, uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, value, the chapter on value with John Thorpe, and having value as your North Star
Mm-hmm.
of your digital transformation was great. And then Sherry Holland from New Zealand writes about neuroscience of transformation, and you were just touching on that, Frank, with
Mm-hmm.
with change and the chemistry that goes on with change.
Right.
Uh, Hans Gilor, agile transformation, and that agile mindset that we need. Of course, the leadership chapter and my buddies Lewis and Clark
Mm-hmm.
that I contributed. Jessica Carroll, who has been a guest on this program before, talking about client and partner engagement. She writes a chapter on that. Roy Atkinson and the customer experience. And then Frank wrapped it up with the digital transformation readiness and talks about how do you know if you're ready to even embark on these things. And so it's a well-rounded look. And as we've been using the analogy of this cookbook, there's a lot of great ingredients in there for you to design your next dish. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Frank then comes in at the end of the book and does a chapter on wrapping it all up. And Frank, I want to pivot to that piece for just a minute because you start off by talking about a couple of digital transformation stories that probably everybody is familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
The Uber Lyft story about disrupting the taxi industry,
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb disrupting the hotel industry. And then you pivot to one that I know I was not familiar with, and my guess is some of our listeners wouldn't be familiar with. So can you tell us a little bit about the FedEx story of transformation?
Well, yeah, our one of our well, before I do that, I want to get to a little bit of an editorial on the Uber, Lyft, and even where we call Get a Ride, and then a
Yep.
place to sleep. The interesting thing about that is we very rarely talk about the other side of that. How, say, Uber and Lyft, where you know the taxis, and you had to be licensed, you get a hack license, and they're resisting this. They're trying to keep Uber and Lyft out of their markets. But what they failed to really recognize was, well, why don't you just adopt that technology?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not it's not it's it's not hard. I mean, so
Yeah.
Just adopt the technology. Now you're competing with using their own model. Just use their own model. I mean, you got cabs
Yeah.
flying around all over the place. You have to hail them, or especially if you're in New York or what have you. Just develop an app
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
your yellow cab app. So you could have an Uber app, a Lyft app, a yellow cab app. Just why resist it and try to keep them out? Just
Right.
play their game. So
Yeah.
I didn't understand that, and
Yeah.
that I think is a nuance that people don't really get to. That was the first thing I did.
Yeah.
Just develop an app. What's
Yeah.
the problem
Very
there?
true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shipping a package. So one of our colleagues um, uh, really developed the Federal Express Super Tracker and the computer systems to support it. So
Ah,
shipping a package, this I included, I included in the example. This is a major transformation. So now everybody uses this, right? I mean, even the United States Post Office. I mean, you can track your letter, your package, but prior to this is very, very revolutionary. Like being able to track your package. What?
yeah.
And now with in the area, in the, I guess the recent events of say lost luggage. Um, so how do airlines track your luggage? Well, the customers found a way. This is consumerization, right? Some
Hmm.
people have put tracking devices in their luggage and have found the luggage for the airline. Hey, guess
Right.
what? My luggage is in Tahiti. Can you send me
Yes.
there? Right?
Yes. I'd like to go.
Yeah. So I thought that was really very novel. So
Uh-huh.
now we bring the area of consumerization in, and pulling back the curtain on IT. Like, wow, if I can do that, then why can't you do that? Well, let's do that. So maybe the airlines can put little magnetic strips on the bag tags,
Hmm.
and they can scan them. And now
Yeah.
you lose your bag, I can track your bag in the network wherever it is. How novel would that be? If
Yeah.
anybody's listening out there, maybe they could develop that. But that's what I would do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So um, from consumerization, the customer experience now is going to drive that innovation. So how many
Yes.
how many travelers do you think are going to put some sort of tracking device in their luggage?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's a pretty doggone good idea, right?
I appreciate that story, and like I say, I love the way you wrapped up the book and kind of brought it all together. You leave the reader with what you call the five mantras of digital transformation. Can you just share with our listeners what those mantras are?
Great way to wrap it up. Well, first of all, and in no order of importance, but the fact that it's first, maybe I think it's important. First mantra, transformation never ends. If you think of this as a project, you're approaching it all wrong. Now, you may have transformation efforts that have beginning and ends, but the actual transformation never ends. It's an ongoing program, if you will. If you need to speak in project management terms, it's a program. But transformation never ends. It is a journey, not a destination. That's why we abhor or we don't like maturity models, because maturity models tend to imply a destination. Well, once I
Yeah.
get to maturity level 5, I'm good. So transformation never ends. It's a journey. Second, transformation is about culture, not technology. Technology is an enabler, it's a transport vehicle, but if you don't have that culture, um, basically, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. But so
Yeah.
you need a disruptive culture, an accepting culture, a tolerant culture, a culture that's open, a culture that's willing to accept failure and learn from it. Um, and the technology is an enabler or a driving force to that. Let business outcomes, the third one, let business outcomes guide your journey, not outputs, outcomes. So, like my earlier example of terminal versus instrumental value, what is it
Mhm.
that we're trying to achieve, and are we achieving it? There, actually, this is really nothing new. I'm just putting it in an old bottles, new wine kind of thing.
Mhm.
If you're
Yep.
familiar with John Rockhart's critical success factors, and if and in those things, it's what are and this was developed, I believe, in 82, 83, somewhere in there. No, actually, it's 1979. Sorry, I'm dating myself.
Mhm.
1979, Harvard Business Review article, and you can look it up. You have your strategy. You have the things that you want to be doing. Critical success factors are those 4 to 6 things that if you do these things successfully, you will get there. You will
Yeah.
achieve your outcomes.
Mhm.
So if you want to think in terms of critical success factors, that's fine too. Fourth, business as usual no longer exists. And once you've established a business transformation, that business as usual may no longer exist. That
Yeah.
goes hand in hand with the transformation never ends.
Yeah.
And finally, create a culture of continuous change, disruption. Um, Again, the human condition seeks equilibrium, and we don't like changes. I mean, I don't think I've moved some papers on my desk in several months, but you know, whatever.
Mhm.
But you have to be prepared for that. Not
Yeah.
only be prepared for it, you have to embrace it and you have to drive it. So those are the 5 mantras. And thanks for asking. A great way to summarize that.
Well, and I think it's a great way to wrap up our conversation today as well. So, Frank, I want to thank you so much, not only for joining us today here on Status Go, but the leadership you bring to the Institute. Its work is important, and I, for one, appreciate it. I know the other fellows appreciate it. And thank you for being a guest today on Status Go.
Jeff, it was my pleasure, and I am humbled that you would ask me to be on.
To our listeners, if you have a question or want to learn more, read the book. There's your call to action. No, seriously, visit intervision.com. The show notes will provide links and contact information, and we'll provide a link to where you can find the book. This is Jeff Tunn for Dr. Frank Granito. Thank you very much for listening.
You've been listening to the Status Go podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes or get more information at intervision.com. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, find Intervision on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Thank you for listening. Until next time.